everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome back to the series where I read a book from each of the female Nobel laureates in literature, and we discuss the authors, their work. I recommend them for those who might enjoy their work, and we discuss one or more of their works. Today's topic is the 2024 Nobel laureate from South Korea, the wonderful Han Kang. She is not only really important in the sense that she is the most recent Nobel laureate who is also a woman, in literature specifically, but also in my personal journey in beginning to read the books from women who won the Nobel Prize in Literature. She wrote The Vegetarian, which is an internationally well-regarded work of fiction. And once I read that book a year ago, I was committed to make this into a project to figure out what essence is there in the writing of these women that made them able to get a literary prize that is very rarely handed out to women. I would like to begin with a short introduction of Han Kang, her biography in just a nutshell. She was born in Gwangju, South Korea in 1970, and she was born into a literary family. Her father, previously a teacher, transitioned into a full-time author when Han Kang was only 9 years old, and this was also the time when her family relocated from Gwangju to Suyuri in Seoul. Han Kang studied Korean literature at Yonsei University, and she debuted as an author in 1993 and then as a novelist in 1994. In 2024, she won the Nobel Prize in Literature for her intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas and exposes the fragility of human life. Han Kang's literature in general, and in my personal opinion, is an incredible mix of real-life experiences through the eyes of a poet, with so much compassion and yet such an astute look at the day-to-day horrors of oppression, of mental health, and all these problems that are ultimately unavoidable in today's society. And she shows us the sort of underbelly of life through incredible writing. I find her books to be incredibly compelling, and further than that, they have this amazing momentum. Whenever I read one of her books, I feel like I'm talking to someone who is sensitive and who has this way of weaving a story so that even the hard parts feel manageable, because there's always this sense of meaning behind it. There's never horror for horror's sake in her work, even when there are extremes, and even when she talks about something horrible, there's always this feeling of bearing witness, and that in itself being meaningful. And so I really recommend her books to those who are able and willing and happy to dwell on the harsh realities of life, and who are seeking poetic books with a lot of lyricism to them, I should say, and those who want something that is more than just witnessing the suffering of others, and something that makes you feel like you are part of one collective that we are all humans together and that none of the experiences that we have are isolated. If there is one takeaway that you have from this video, it would be that if you wanted to read a book from a Nobel Prize winner in literature, I think it should be Han Kang. She is incredibly relevant, not only historically, but also in the sense that we can relate to her work, or at least I could really relate to her work. And honestly, she is one of the most readable people on this list as far as I have gotten so far. So if you can just pick up The Vegetarian, Human Acts, maybe Greek Lessons, I think it would really enrich anyone's life, as long as you are okay with reading about difficult, heavy topics. If you are not ready or not willing or able to engage with themes of mental health problems, eating disorders, war, and this writing style that has a lot of descriptions, vivid descriptions of body horror in them, then I think you should just read something else from another author. There is so much out there. But if these things are things that you are okay with and you like even, then Han Kang's work is something that would be a real shame to miss. She is just that amazing. Let's talk about The Vegetarian for a moment. Originally, The Vegetarian was published as 3 separate novellas in literary magazines in Korea, and then in 2007 Han Kang published it as one novel, these 3 parts bound together into one volume. These 3 parts are The Vegetarian, Mongolian Mark, and Flaming Trees. This book is, on the surface, just about one woman's journey of mental health and just going through life in an oppressive society. And the sort of beginning spark of the story is her having a dream that makes her turn into a vegetarian and change her life from a conventional person who goes along with what is required of her in Korean society to someone who, in this one aspect of her life, and then continually more and more aspects of her life, goes against what is expected of a woman. And the retributions in the book are what make it something unique and horrible and compelling to such a large degree to me. Yes, so all in all, The Vegetarian tells us the story of a woman who slowly starts to go against what is expected of her in her life and in her position, and learns what the consequences of that can be. Some of the reception of the book mentions that it is extreme and bizarre, and I believe that these words are good descriptors of the book. It is extreme and there are bizarre elements to it, and I believe that those who enjoy Han Kang's perspective on life will agree that these extreme elements and the slight bizarre take on life really suit the story. They really make this dread, this horror of being confined by societal expectations into something tangible. And that is what good writing can do for us. And that's one of the reasons why I truly couldn't recommend for everyone to read The Vegetarian. It is a very short book, less than 300 pages, I would say less than 250 even. And these the pacing of it really makes it a quick read, even if it isn't an easy read. Let's move on to Human Acts. The Vegetarian I read a year ago, as I mentioned. Human Acts I read just last week, so it is much fresher in my memory. This book is broken into 6 chapters and then an epilogue. And about the story of a fictional boy called Dongho in Gwangju in 1970 at the time of the Gwangju uprising. We start the story with following Dongho without him being named for the beginning of the story, and from the second person perspective. So we hear the story as you do this, you do that. It is a unique perspective that few authors choose to take, and in my experience, the times when it really does work well is when there is a perspective change that makes us realize why it was happening. Because I already know and enjoy Han Kang's writing, I was happy to keep an open heart and wait for that realization, wait for the story to justify this second person perspective. And it does. It really does work, even if at first it might be a little jarring to jump into a story that describes you. I felt like it really involved me personally, and it made me think a lot about what I as a person would do in similar circumstances. And the first story, strangely, might be the most gentle one, and at the same time it carries this feeling of dread of bad things coming but not yet happening, and the idealism that people who join and take part in an uprising must have for the uprising to ever happen, but then also the stupidity that comes with risking so much. And so we follow the story of 15-year-old Dongho as he works to help people reunite with their loved ones after they have been killed by the military in the Gwangju uprising. He processes corpses, and that is his story. That is what the first chapter is about. It is an incredibly difficult story to read if one is not ready to read about a bloody uprising that it involves so much violence. Then I would not recommend reading this book. It is full of descriptions of bodily horrors, of decay, of bodies and people going through almost unnameable horrors, and yet Han Kang somehow manages to describe them in detail and also with compassion, which I feel is an incredible feat. This book made me cry. It is so emotionally involved, and interestingly, even though the extreme events happen in the middle of the story, the part that really made me feel for everyone involved in it was the end, when the story of the mother of the child really drives it home that the people who passed away in the Gwangju uprising were just average people. They were nothing special in the sense that they weren't superheroes. They were just people who had their own stories, and those stories got cut short by the horrors of that uprising, by military overkill, and by a government that did not treat its citizens with the respect and with the dignity that we all deserve. And that it is a tragedy for any 15-year-old to die. For the same reason, it's a tragedy to lose a life so young. It's a tragedy to lose any life. And that is at the heart of this novel for me. And so yes, Human Acts is an incredible foray into the human psyche, into what we are able to do to each other and with what we indeed do to each other. It is shocking, it is painful, it is beautiful, and the story is handled with so much care. And one of my favorite things about it is the way that the author finds a way to make historical fiction into this poetic song of expressing the stories of so many. In a non-fiction book, we have to stick to the facts. In a fiction book about a real historical event, an author can try to distill the experiences of so many and make almost an average out of it and tell a story that encompasses so many different perspectives in a way that non-fiction is just not able to do. And this is a great example of what fiction can do for us as humans, where it can tell us about something so large, something so incomprehensible through an emotional through line. And especially with the epilogue that is about the author herself, where the lines blur between a character in the book and the actual writer Han Kang. I feel that that part really encompasses this incredible value to Han Kang's writing, where the historical is almost more important than the fiction. We can understand the Gwangju uprising from an emotional point of view from this book better than we could from a history book, because she makes these people who went through it come to life. Not one of them, not a real person in particular, and yet somehow all of them as one symbol distilled into the character of Dong Ho and the other people in the novel whose lives cross with the main characters. That is all that I had to say today about Han Kang and her incredible works. I really hope that you will check her out. She doesn't need me to champion her, and yet I am more than happy to do so. I really hope that you will find her work interesting and compelling and just as meaningful as I did. Next week we are moving on to Annie Ernaux, and then we will continue with Louise Gluck. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you subscribe and leave a comment and let me know what books from Annie Ernaux and Louise Gluck you think I should read. See you next week. Have a good day. Bye!